You did it. It's the last part of the Story Choreography Project. We are going to put all of the pieces together to create your dance. From inspiration to physical storytelling, you've arrived to my favorite part of the process, experimentation and creation. So get ready to try some new things today as you finish up your dance choreographer. Let's go. So we're gonna start by having JC go through the 3 poses that we created in our last step, our physical storytelling pieces. So she's gonna start. My inspiration was lonely isolation. It was on the floor. That was my first pose. The second was the music hall architecture. And then the last was that busy feeling of independence, running towards a new life. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take those 3 poses and explore movement to connect them. So remember, today's all about experimentation and creation. So things might change. We're gonna try a couple of things. When we add our music, we might change some things, and that's okay. Let's start experimenting. JC's gonna get into her first pose. And I'm gonna ask her to move in slow motion, super slow motion, almost like she's in some kind of fog or mud, and to get into that second pose. So I'm choosing slow because when I think about loneliness and isolation, and also my grandmother's age, I think about moving slowly. Cool, I'm gonna ask you to do that again. Great, let's try again. I'm gonna ask you to go even slower, and I might even pause you in some places. Cool, let's go back and explore a little bit. What I really liked about what you just did is you brought your shoulder and your foot around, kind of like in a different pace. Can we exaggerate those 2 things a little bit? Shoulder and foot. It was almost like more of a, like your foot like drew a line, your back foot drew a line on the floor as you got up. That's what I really responded to. Yeah, like that. But it was after your shoulder went down. Yeah. Oh, yes. That's it. I love that. Oh, and I want to keep that, where you rolled through the arm. Yes. It's like, that for me was like that hope, that start to reach towards hope. Cool. And it's like digging back in your memory a little bit as you come up into that second music hall pose. Oh, love it. So I want my audience to notice a little bit that as she explored movement, her music hall pose tipped a little bit. Let's keep that tip. I love that tip, right? That's a part of that experimentation. Great. Can we try it again? Cool. So remember, the story I'm telling right now is loneliness, isolation, and then allowing memory to start to kind of form. That's so cool. So as you can see, JC and I have established a dialogue. We're working together, dancer and choreographer in conversation of movement. You might know exactly what you want your dancer to do, which is great. Have them do it and try it and see what it looks like on their body. Now, you might be your own dancer, so be sure to watch yourself in a mirror and see how your interpretations are working. So now we're going to move from pose 2 to pose 3. From pose 2 to pose 3. And one of the things we're going to experiment with is repetitive movement. So that means doing something over and over. So right now, I'm going to repeat by moving my arms or my hands back and forth. This is a repetitive movement. The reason I'm asking her to try a repetitive movement is because I am thinking about my grandmother as she works in that factory. All of the things that she has to do over and over and over. You might try something else. What is the emotion that might be this part of the story, or the element that might be involved that you might want to inspire how you're moving from pose 2 to pose 3. I'm gonna experiment a little bit with JC. We're gonna try repetitive movements of arms or hands, and I'm also gonna have her try repetitive movements of feet. And then we're gonna kind of see where we get. So here we are, experimenting and creating, moving from 2 to 3. All right, JC, I'm gonna ask you to get into pose 2. We're gonna start in pose 2. And now I'm gonna ask you to move to 3, and I just want you to do it in the absolute easiest way. What's the easiest way to get from 2 to 3? Great. So thinking about that super easy way, and then now thinking about that repetitive movement, starting with maybe, so you're feeling upper body, arms, hands, repetitive movement. So go back into 2. Maybe you start with a small repetitive movement that like gets bigger. So what can be like really small in your arms or hands that like grows into something bigger? Yeah. And then that repeats a few times until you end into your 3. Cool, let's try that again. She's doing something, she's repeating it. She's also exploring it a little bit. She's using some dynamics. 1, and she's like swinging around, letting the force of her body kind of bring her around to 3. Cool. Okay, so let's experiment. Repetitive movement of the feet. What might that look like? So a shifting of the weight. Okay, but this is where I'm gonna be tricksy. Keep your arms up at first. Yeah. Incorporating, I love that you incorporate the repetitive movement of your hands. That's great. Cool. Yeah, I dig that. When we play with the music, we might shift the timing a little bit. So let's do the hard part. Let's see if we can go from 1 to 2 and 2 to 3. Growing into music hall, thinking about those repetitive movements. So I was inspired by the way you moved your head. Can you be like even more direct with like maybe eye contact, imagining that there are people kind of crossing this imaginary street as you go back and forth? Does that make sense? It's like maybe someone catches your eye and that's what inspires your movement to begin with. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah. Cool. I love that. So that's 1 to 2 and 2 to 3. So now we need to figure out how we want to end this. So that ending, that pose, was about running towards something. So I don't think I want to end it with a pose. Like I think I want you to literally run towards something. Yeah, okay. So let's have you, get into 3. And allow you to be called back for a second into pose 2, like really quickly. So like you're running towards something, you get called back, and then you make that decision to go towards it. Yeah, but same way. So it's like you do your repetitive, and then into 3. Yeah, I think that's kind of a cool way to end it. You go back into 2, and then you're ready. Cool. Guess what we did? We made a dance. Now it's time to start setting your movement to music. This part of the process can happen at any point. I decided to stick with a story-based process, so I'm adding music last. You might have already started to experiment with music throughout your process. Choreographers choose music in all different ways. I chose this song for my vision board because my grandmother and Rosemary Clooney actually grew up down the street from each other, and Rosemary Clooney was always playing in the house. So I found a song that connected my story and that artist to my grandmother. You can choose whatever type of music you want, and you can also even change your mind. Maybe even halfway through your story, you might switch songs. It's up to you.
Lately when I'm in my room, all by myself, in the solitary gloom, I come to myself. Hey there, you with the stars in your eyes, love never made a fool of you. You used to be too wise. Lately when I'm in my room, all by myself, in the solitary gloom, I come to myself.
Awesome, great. So right here, do you hear that like lilt repeat in the music? Can that be where you start that? Yeah, and when she starts to say, hey there, that's when you can really start to try that repetitive movement. Perfect. But you heard that in the music? Great. And the other thing that I love that if we could capture even more is that transformation of being older, like not just physically older face, but then as you start to grow, you're going back into that memory of being 18 again, right? Light, bright, airy. And you're doing that, but if even exaggerating that on your face and physically. Great, you want to try it again? That worked really well.
Lately when I'm in my room, all by myself,
Yeah, just like that. That sadness.
I come to myself.
And then that facial. Yeah, right there. That's great. Lightening up. Perfect.
You with the stars in your eyes, love never made a fool of you. You
Back to 2. Running towards your future. Yes!
lately when I'm in my room, all by myself, in the solitary gloom, I come to myself. Hey there, you with the stars in your eyes, love never made a fool of you. You used to be too wise.
JC, thank you so much for helping me turn my grandmother's story into a dance. I can't wait for her to see it. I can't wait for my family to see it. So thank you, beautiful, beautiful work. I had so much fun experimenting with you. So choreographers, it's your turn. You have the final piece of the puzzle to turn your story into a dance. Thank you so much for joining us for the Story Choreography Project. And Cincinnati Ballet and I cannot wait to see what you create.